I always knew the city would come for my workshop eventually. But I never thought they'd do it with a neon orange condemnation sticker slapped on my roll-up door, claiming my life's work was a public nuisance. And when that kid from the code enforcement office, couldn't have been older than 25, started taking pictures of my '68 Mustang like it was a heap of scrap metal, that was the moment I knew this was a fight, not a negotiation. My name's Frank Voss. I've been a master mechanic for 40 years. I know engines, and know metal, and I know when someone's trying to bully me. I built Voss & Sons Auto from a dirt lot into the most trusted shop in 3 counties. We never advertised. Word of mouth was enough. When my boys left to start their own lives, I downsized, moved the operation to my 2-acre property on the edge of town. Zoned commercial residential, perfectly legal. I had my house out back and my shop up front, a dream setup. At least that's what I thought. Then the city council, led by a slick-haired developer named Robert Sterling, rezoned the empty fields behind me for a new subdivision called Heritage Oaks. Suddenly, my corner of the world was prime real estate. The first letter was friendly enough, typed on crisp city letterhead. Mr. Sterling himself proposed a voluntary acquisition, talking about progress and community aesthetics. He offered a fraction of what the land was worth. I wrote back a single sentence on a grease-stained invoice. Not for sale. The second letter was less polite. It cited obscure municipal codes about visual blight and incompatible land use. It mentioned my collection of project cars, calling them derelict vehicles. They weren't derelict. They were my retirement projects. I had titles for every one. I had my lawyer, a tough old bird named Rita Alvarez, send a packet back. Deeds, zoning permits, photos of the pristine shop interior. Case closed, I thought. But Robert Sterling didn't get rich by taking no for an answer. The harassment started small. A surprise fire inspection. A complaint about groundwater contamination from oil that I recycle legally. Then surveyors started pacing the edge of my property without permission. I ran them off with the help of my old shop dog, Duke, a Rottweiler with a growl that sounds like gravel in a blender. They left in a hurry. Things got quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you check your locks twice. Then I came back from a parts run to find that neon sticker. And that kid, smirking as he photographed my Mustang. "Sorry, sir," he said. "This property is under review. All non-operational vehicles are subject to impound." I saw red. "Son," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "that car has a full tank of gas and will outrun your Prius any day. You're trespassing." He didn't back down. "I'm acting on city orders. You have 48 hours to comply." And then he made his mistake. He reached for the door handle of my car. I moved his hand away, firm but not violent. "You touch my property again," I said, leaning in, "and you'll be dealing with the sheriff for trespass and attempted vandalism." His smirk vanished. He scrambled back to his city-issued car and sped off. I called Rita immediately. "Frank," she said, "this is a classic squeeze play. They're creating a paper trail to force you out. We need to build our own." So I did. I got every vehicle officially appraised. I hired an independent environmental inspector who gave my shop a sparkling review. But Rita dug deeper. She found out Sterling's Heritage Oaks project was already over budget. The city council had approved it based on projected tax revenue that didn't exist. And worse, Sterling had a history in the next county over of pushing out small businesses with exactly these tactics. He'd settle at the last minute to avoid a court record. I wasn't settling. A week later, a tow truck showed up with a police escort, there to confiscate my derelict Mustang. I was ready. I met them in the driveway with Rita, the appraisals, the inspection report, and a lawsuit for wrongful seizure filed that morning. The police officer took one look at the paperwork and called a sergeant. Meanwhile, Sterling pulled up in his BMW, yelling about city ordinances. I pointed to the security camera mounted on the shop. "It's all on tape, Robert. Your guy tried to break into my car. That's a felony." His face went pale. The tow truck driver left. The police left. And Sterling was left standing alone in my driveway. That's when Rita played her card. She had a whistleblower from the planning department, a woman sick of Sterling's bullying. She handed over emails showing Sterling had pressured the code office to target me specifically. He called my shop an eyesore that was blocking progress. The smoking gun. The condemnation was dropped the next day. A month later, Sterling resigned from the development board after the newspaper ran a story about his tactics. The new council members even apologized. I didn't take the sticker off my door. I left it there, faded and peeling as a reminder. And just for my own satisfaction, I parked the Mustang right by the road, polished to a mirror finish, a sign on the windshield that read, "Still not for sale." Now every evening, I sit on my porch with Duke, listening to the quiet hum of my shop. The lesson? When a bully wants what you have, they'll try to call it trash first. Don't let them. Stand your ground. Because a man's legacy isn't zoned for their profit. This is Voss and Sons. The quiet lasted about a week. The kind of quiet that's heavy, like the air before a summer storm. I knew Linda Mercer. People like her don't just slink away after a public humiliation. They regroup. They get meaner. Boone felt it too, his ears perking up at sounds I couldn't hear, a low growl rumbling in his chest when he stared down toward the stone arch of Pinehurst Ridge. My trail cams kept catching shadows moving just beyond the tree line after dark. Not surveyors this time. Just watchers. Sam called it the calm before the legal storm. He was right. The first shot across the bow wasn't a letter. It was a lien. A notice from some obscure neighborhood infrastructure committee, a shell corporation Sam traced back to a P.O. box in the next town. They claimed my unimproved private road was causing significant erosion damage to their shared watershed. They were slapping a $50,000 assessment on my property for necessary mitigation. It was pure fiction, a paper weapon designed to cloud my title, scare off any future buyers if I ever wanted to sell. I felt the old anger, the ranger instinct to lash out, to meet the threat head-on. But Sam just laughed. "This is good, Mark. It's discovery. Now we can subpoena their financials, their communications. They've handed us a shovel to dig their own grave." So we dug. While Sam's paralegal buried their shell corporation in paperwork, I decided to play a little offense. I knew their weakness wasn't Linda. It was the neighbor she'd bullied into compliance. People like Joe Carter, the board member who gave me the folder. I started making runs into town at different times, parking my truck at the diner. Sure enough, Joe found me there one Tuesday morning, sliding into the booth opposite me, his hand shaking. "She's not done," he whispered, his eyes darting around the nearly empty restaurant. "She's calling it Phase 2. She's going after your water." According to Joe, Linda had found some old, unenforced covenant about shared water rights from when the land was first divided a century ago. She was planning to send a crew to inspect a spring on my land that she claimed fed their community well. It was another lie. My spring ran east. Their well was fed from an aquifer to the west. But she didn't need truth. She needed a pretext to get boots on my ground again. I thanked Joe, paid for his coffee, and drove home with a plan forming. I didn't wait for her crew. I hired my own, a licensed geologist and a water rights expert from the state. They spent a day mapping the hydrology, taking samples, and writing an ironclad report that proved my spring and their well were completely separate systems. I had the report notarized and sent a copy to every single house in Pinehurst Ridge, along with a simple note. Don't let Linda Mercer raise your HOA fees for a lawsuit she can't win. The backlash was immediate. The next day, Linda showed up at my gate, alone this time. No pastel suit. Her face was a mask of cold fury. "You're poisoning the neighborhood," she spat. "This is harassment." I just stood there, arms crossed. "No, Linda. Harassment was your barricade. This is just me sharing the facts. You're finished here. You should leave before they run you out." She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear behind the rage. She turned and left, but she had one more card to play. A dangerous one. 2 nights later, Boone went berserk. I grabbed my rifle and went to the porch. Down by the tree line, I saw flickering light. Torches. Not literal torches, but the high beams of 3 trucks, pointing up at my cabin. Then came the sound of breaking glass. They'd smashed the trail, cam at the bottom of the drive. Then, a bottle with a rag stuffed in it flew out of the darkness, shattering against an oak tree 20 feet from my porch. The gasoline smell hit me instantly. It was a warning, a threat of arson. I didn't fire a shot. I just raised my rifle and put a single round through the grill of the lead truck. The sound of the shot echoed through the valley like a thunderclap. The lights died instantly. Engines roared as they scrambled to reverse down the narrow track, crashing through undergrowth in their panic. I called Sam, then the sheriff. This wasn't trespassing anymore. This was attempted arson, assault with a deadly weapon. My dash cam had caught the truck's plates as they fled. They were all registered to addresses in Pinehurst Ridge. Linda's final mistake was using her own loyalists as foot soldiers. The sheriff arrested 2 of them before dawn. Facing serious time, they rolled on Linda in a heartbeat. They had text messages, emails. She promised them reduced HOA fees, cash payments. She'd orchestrated the whole thing. The DA hit her with a list of charges that would put her away for a decade. The war was over. This morning, a moving van was parked outside her house. The HOA voted unanimously to dissolve the board and start fresh. The new president, a quiet man named Joe Carter, hand-delivered a letter of apology and a promise to respect my boundaries. I just nodded and took the letter. I've already ordered more trail cams. Higher quality. With audio. The lesson: a bully will always overplay their hand. You just have to be patient, document everything, and let them hang themselves with the rope they give you. My land has never felt more like mine. But I still sleep with my rifle by the door. Some habits die hard. This is battle hard. Joe Carter's apology letter was polite. Too polite. It talked about a new chapter and healing the community rift. I've seen enough of the world to know that when a politician talks about healing, they're usually just buying time. I tucked the letter in a file Sam labeled potential evidence and went back to reinforcing my perimeter. I added motion sensor lights to the tree line and upgraded my trail cams to ones with cellular uplinks. If anything tripped them, the photo would hit my phone in 3 seconds flat. Boone approved, sniffing around the new posts with a serious expression. The first alert came not from the cameras, but from a certified letter. The official Pinehurst Ridge HOA letterhead was gone, replaced with something called the Pine Valley Conservation Trust. The language was slick, full of words like preservation, legacy, and responsible stewardship. They weren't trying to find me or take my road anymore. Now they wanted to partner with me to place a conservation easement on my land. They made it sound noble, like I'd be a hero for protecting the ridge from future development. The hook was a tempting tax break, but the fine print was a poison pill. The easement would have permanently banned any new structures, including the small workshop I planned to build, and given the trust the right to conduct quarterly ecological surveys in perpetuity. It was Linda's playbook, just wearing a nicer suit. Instead of trying to steal my land, they were trying to put it in a glass case where they could control it. Sam was almost impressed. This is sophisticated, Mark. They've hired a real lawyer. They're making this about the environment and community good. It's a much harder fight in the court of public opinion. I could feel the trap closing. If I refused, I'd look like the greedy landowner who hated nature. But I knew this wasn't about conservation. It was about control by another name. My reply was simple. I had my own ecologist, the same one who'd cleared my land before, draft a report showing my responsible forestry plan and the healthy bear and deer population that thrived on my property. I sent it to the county paper. The headline read, "Local veteran a better steward than so-called trust." The trust's next move was quieter. A week later, a drone buzzed over my cabin, lower and more persistent than any before. It wasn't mapping. It was hovering, watching me split wood, watching Boone patrol the yard. I went inside, grabbed the .22 and waited. When it dipped low over the clearing, I put a single round through its rotor. It spun down into the dirt like a broken insect. I didn't touch it. I just took a picture and sent it to the sheriff. The serial number led to a tech rental company, paid for by a credit card under Joe Carter's name. So much for the new chapter. The sheriff paid Joe a visit. He claimed it was a misunderstanding, that a volunteer was just taking aerial photos of the valley. The lie was transparent. The final confrontation was set in motion by a piece of my own past. An old ranger buddy, Mike, now worked for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He was in the area on another case and stopped by for a beer. As we sat on the porch, he mentioned almost casually that he'd heard through the grapevine about my HOA situation. He said a name that made my blood run cold, Vincent Rossi. A mid-level player with ties to construction and land development schemes, now under state scrutiny. Mike had seen Rossi's name on a bank transfer linked to the Pine Valley Conservation Trust. Linda Mercer was just the face. Rossi was the money and the muscle. This was never about a neighborhood dispute. It was a corporate land grab, disguised as suburban drama. Rossi wanted my ridge because it was the high ground, perfect for a cell tower or a luxury spec home with a view he could sell for millions. Armed with that name, Sam unleashed hell. He filed a new lawsuit, naming Rossi, the trust, and the remnants of the HOA board for conspiracy and racketeering. The discovery process was a bloodbath. Subpoenaed financial records showed Rossi funneling money through the trust to pay for the legal fees, the drone, even the gas for the trucks that had attacked me. The whole elegant scheme crumbled into a messy criminal pile. The trust dissolved overnight. Joe Carter and the rest of the board resigned in a panic, cutting deals with the DA to avoid prosecution. Rossi, facing serious state-level charges, skipped town. This morning, I walked the entire border of my 30 acres. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the quiet of anticipation, but of peace earned. The war was truly over. I stopped at the new sign I'd put up next to the old one. It's bigger, with the official Georgia state seal on it. It reads, "This property protected by covenant and firearm. All activity recorded." Down in Pinehurst Ridge, the houses look quieter. People wave now, a real wave, not a nervous flick of the hand. I even got a pie from an elderly lady down the street. Apple. It was pretty good. The lesson is final. They'll come at you with lawyers, with lies, even with fake environmentalism. But if you know the law better than they do, and you're willing to stand your ground longer than they're willing to attack, you win. Freedom isn't free. It's paid for with vigilance, paperwork, and the occasional well-placed rifle shot. This is battle hard, and for now it's done. The pie was good. The quiet was better. For a whole month, the only sounds on my ridge were the wind in the pines, the crackle of my fireplace, and Boone's snoring. I almost let my guard down. Almost. But a peace that comes after a war like that isn't something you trust. It's something you patrol. Sam's final bill came with a note, "The beast is dead." But remember, the forest is full of scavengers. He wasn't wrong. The first scavenger was bureaucracy. A notice from the county tax assessor's office arrived, informing me of a routine reevaluation of my property. The value of my land had, according to them, increased substantially due to regional development trends. They tripled my annual tax bill. It was a clean, legal knife to the ribs. I couldn't fight it with a rifle. I knew this had Rossi's fingerprints all over it. He might have fled, but he'd greased the right palms on his way out. A higher tax bill could slowly bleed me dry, forcing me to sell the land he still wanted. I met with Sam again. He leaned back in his leather chair. "They're playing the long game, Mark. This is chess, not a bar fight. We can appeal, but it's a slow process." I didn't have the patience for slow. I needed leverage. I started digging myself. I spent days in the county records office, looking for the regional development trends they cited. All I found were permits for a few new roofs in Pinehurst Ridge. Then I found it. A memo from the assessor's office itself, written just a year ago, stating that properties in my area, specifically those without municipal water or sewer, were to be assessed at a lower rate due to infrastructure limitations. My land hadn't changed. The rules had, and someone had pressured them to ignore their own memo. I didn't just send the memo to the appeal board. I sent it to the same local newspaper that had run my story before. The reporter, a sharp woman named Davis, smelled blood. She published a piece titled, "County Targets Veterans Land with Mysterious Tax Hike." It asked pointed questions about who exactly was benefiting from this sudden development trend. The public pressure was immediate. The tax assessor, a nervous man named Phil Duncan, called Sam himself, offering to reconsider the valuation. But as that fire died down, a colder one ignited. Late one evening, my new trail cam sent an alert. A single figure, dressed in dark clothes, was moving slowly along the creek bed that marked the western border of my land. They weren't trespassing, just skirting the very edge. But they were carrying something. A long, narrow case. They stopped, opened it, and assembled what looked like a high-tech tripod. They spent an hour taking readings, then packed up and vanished back into the shadows. It wasn't an attack. It was intelligence gathering. The next day, I got a visit from a man in an expensive suit. He introduced himself as Mr. Evans, a representative for North Georgia Land Holdings, LLC. He was polite, professional, and ice-cold. He made an offer to buy my land. A legit offer this time, a number so high it would set me up for life anywhere else. "This is a simple business transaction, Mr. Dalton," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "A chance for you to take your win and leave the complications behind." I asked him who owned North Georgia Land Holdings. He smiled a thin, lifeless smile. "The ownership is a private matter. The offer is real." I told him the land wasn't for sale at any price. He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. "That's unfortunate. The situation here is becoming quite complex. A clean exit is often the wisest choice." The threat was unspoken but clear. The trouble would only get worse. After he left, I called Mike, my GBI friend. I gave him the company name. He called back an hour later, his voice grim. "The LLC is a shell. It's owned by another LLC, registered in Delaware. It's a Russian doll, Mark. But the money trail we're tracing, it leads back to Vincent Rossi. He's not done. He's just outsourcing." That night, I sat on my porch with a different kind of resolve. The barricades and the lawsuits were over. Now I was in a shadow war with a ghost. They wouldn't come with a gate or a forged document again. They'd come with money, with lawyers, with whispers at the county level. I looked at Boone, his head on my knee. "We can't just defend anymore, boy," I said. "We need to find the source." I needed to go on the offensive. Not with a gun, but with information. I needed to find out what made my 30 acres so valuable that a man like Rossi wouldn't quit. The answer, I knew, wasn't in my deed. It was buried somewhere in his past. The real battle was just beginning. And this time, I'd have to be the hunter.